Good afternoon, Duval. My name is Gus Logue. This Duval Rundown show is presented by Injury Care Centers. Welcome to episode number 15. Our post-game reaction of the Jaguars versus Colts in Week 5 begins now. Jacksonville was able to get the job done, just barely, but they held on in the end for a 37-34 win in their second home game of the season. I've got a few people joining me today to break down the game in a live post-game reaction show, starting with the man himself, Hacker, who's joined us after each show. He's got the fifth quarter coming up later with Coach Campo and Leon Searcy, so make sure to tune into 1010XL channels and 92.5 later to catch him there. But immediate reactions, Hacker. Let's hear it.
Phew, the off the brow. Boy, Gus, this had the potential to be a lot different. My goodness, if they would have lost this game, woo! But they didn't. Trevor was phenomenal. Cam Little with a perfect 49-yarder to win the game, and we're happy right now. But holy cow, if they would have lost. But again, terrific victory. You got to get one, right? You got to start with one. To climb your way out of the black hole, the abyss of 0-4, you got to get one. They got one today, so it's a good start.
Absolutely. I left the stadium after Jacksonville scored on the Brenton Strange catch, which made them go up 2 touchdowns. And so I was actually relaxed because usually when I'm leaving a game, I mean, this is only the second time I've done it this year, but to leave the press box starting the game and try to get back to my place to do this show is a little bit of a rush. But today I was feeling pretty good because they were up 2 touchdowns. I thought even if Flacco led them down and scored once, then I don't know, 2 touchdowns is a lot to overcome in the last 8 minutes or whatever it was. But of course, the Colts made it look easy and they got down in a hurry and scored 1 touchdown, then forced a 3-and-out, and then went back and scored another one to tie the game up. But I mean, as little credit as I guess we should be giving the Jaguars for allowing it to be a game at the end, I feel like they do deserve credit for finishing the game because that's something that we haven't seen from them at all this season. Obviously, in Week 3, it was a blowout, so there was no chance that they were going to be close in the final score of that one. But the rest of the season, it's just they've done well enough to be able to be in the games in the fourth quarter, but just have not been able to close out. And so it was nice to see that happen. First of all, shout out to Cam Little for, as you're saying, nailing the 49-yarder as time was pretty much expiring. Not as time was expiring, but it was pretty much locked in the game. And then obviously, I think a lot of props go to Trevor Lawrence because obviously he had the bad throw to Brian Thomas Jr. Against double coverage that was intercepted. And then there was also the clip that went around from the first quarter where he had Gabe Davis open over the middle for a 3rd down. But on that one, Lawrence still completed the pass and got into a 4th and short situation. So I didn't think that was a big deal. But those were the 2 negative plays I can think of off the top of my head. And otherwise, Lawrence went 28 for 34 for 371 yards, an average of 10.9 yards per attempt for 2 touchdowns, an interception, and a passer rating of – just kidding. I don't have it up here on my box score. But it was definitely a high passer rating, definitely the best game of Trevor's season. One of the best games of his career, maybe, especially considering just the deep ball to Thomas Jr. and to Kirk, and then the game-winning drive at the end. So what do you think about Lawrence's performance today, Hack?
It was sensational. He had a bad throw with the interception. By the way, it pinned the Colts down at the 1-yard line. People online were making it out to be the worst thing ever. I mean, it's like a punt, and it's a
punt.
Yeah, one. So it wasn't that big a deal. It was a bad throw. Aside from that, he was phenomenal. I mean, if we're going to kick the guy when he's bad, and we have, and I have, and I think everybody has, give him props when he was good. And he was very, very good. Today, you see why they spent the money on Trevor Lawrence. Brian Thomas Jr. is a stud. He's a certified stud 5 games into his career. Christian Kirk was good. Travis Etienne, man, I like you. Tank Bigsby is coming after your job. He's coming after your job pretty quick. I'm not sure Tank Bigsby right now isn't the best running back on this team. That'll be a conversation moving forward. But again, this was the message all week on my show, and I know Gus talked about it, and so many people have talked about it. You had to get one, right? And now you get one. Now you go to London, right, against a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams, and Chicago's feeling really good about themselves. Hopefully you can knock them back down to earth. Then you play a New England team. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility at all to snap your fingers, be 3-4, and right back in this thing. But they played with fire in the last 5 minutes of this game. Holy moly. I don't know. I'm looking forward to have Coach Campo on the fifth quarter because he's a defensive guy. I don't know if those were two busts to Alec Pierce. I don't know what happened. That is inexcusable. Ryan Nielsen, Andre Sisco, Jarian Jones, all you guys back there, Darby, Antonio Johnson, the whole lot of you. You better do some soul searching after you celebrate this win tonight because you almost cost us the season today. A loss, if they would have lost this game, that's a catastrophe of football epic proportions. So that's got to get cleaned up, and that's got to get cleaned up now. But the offense bailed you out, and Trevor saved the day on his birthday. So it turned out to be a great story.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that at the top. Happy 25th to Trevor. We had a couple YouTube comments. Michael George said, I'm happy we won. However, what do you all think are the reasons why our team continues to struggle? And then Steve Boston had a comment that said, Cisco has played like garbage. He could have stopped that last touchdown. And so for the first comment, I feel like the safeties are a big reason. Like I was in the car for the two Pierce plays and for the last two touchdowns for the Colts.
Yeah, I'm sure those stimulating calls by Frangie. I haven't heard him yet, but I imagine those were really something on the radio.
Absolutely. I like the safety play all season has been a little bit underwhelming to me, especially from Andre Sisco because he was really playing like a breakout player last year before he ended up having some kind of injury. I think it was lower body. And then he is just like not really regained that form. And then Antonio Johnson just kind of has a target on his back where I feel like at first when Tyson Campbell went out, teams were targeting Monteric Brown, but he's actually held up pretty well. And so now teams are doing anything they can, whether it's a tight end or a running back, even a wide receiver. Like we saw Josh Downs a lot today, just going after number 26, Antonio Johnson. And so I think you can start with that position group in terms of like just things that struggled, not just today, but in the season in general, especially considering, like, again, I didn't see those two last touchdown drives by the Colts, but since I'm assuming there was plenty of huge plays and chunk plays, like it's kind of on safeties to prevent that kind of stuff. And so I feel like it starts there. But what other takeaways did you have, Hacker, from the defensive performance today?
Yeah, you're 34-20 with 5 minutes to go. How does Alec Pierce get behind the defense? They blew a coverage on that play. He was wide open. And then the other one to tie the game, it's a 65-yard touchdown with what 3 minutes to go. I mean, what are we doing? There will be a lot of conversation about that. But today really needs to be about Trevor Lawrence. Today needs to be about Brian Thomas Jr., Cam Little, Tank Bigsby, Christian Kirk. I mean, we have killed the offense in the first month, and with good reason, because they were awful for a majority of the first 4 weeks of the year. They were lights out today. And people say, well, the Colts are banged up. Well, you know what? Tough. The Jaguars have been banged up the entire season. The Jaguars haven't had Evan Ingram. The Jaguars didn't have Tyson Campbell today. The Jaguars didn't have Foye Oluokun today. It's 5 weeks into the year. Everybody's banged up. I don't want to hear anything about the Colts' injury problems. I'm not so sure they're not a better team with Flacco in there as Mr. Richardson anyway. They had some issues on defense, certainly, but the offense took advantage of that. And today, again, is about Trevor Lawrence. You know, the Chargers' second half, maybe the Titan game last year, I'm trying to think back. This is one of, if not his best performances that I can ever remember, at least in the regular season.
Ravens game 2 years ago.
Yeah, but he was sensational today. And how many times have we been looking for a guy to emerge at the wide receiver position? And that 85-yarder to Brian Thomas Jr., where he outran the Indianapolis Colts secondary, if that didn't give you flashbacks to Mark Brunell, to Jimmy Smith, I don't know what will. And Jimmy was in the building today to honor Tom Coughlin. So, again, the vibe, Gus, is all positive, right? It's all sunshine and rainbows. And we're going to celebrate this tonight because we've had 4 fifth quarters that have sucked. And we've had 4 Duval rundowns on YouTube that have sucked after the 4 losses. But I was trying to gather my thoughts when Indianapolis came back to tie it at 34. It's hard to make me speechless. I didn't know what the hell I was going to come on here and say, to be honest, if Indianapolis would have won this game.
Yeah.
I'm happy that I did not have to do that because it would have been a funeral procession on the 2024 season.
Totally. I do think that, like, the star of today was Brian Thomas Jr. I do think that also Lawrence's throw to Kirk in the fourth quarter for 61 yards deserves another shout out too, just because, like, Brian Thomas was pretty wide open. It would have been hard to miss that one, but the Kirk one was really a beauty over the top.
I'll give you one play, and no one's going to talk about this, but I think it was gigantic, and it was an 8-yard play. 34-34. Every bit of momentum in that stadium is with the Indianapolis Colts. Trevor Lawrence checks the ball down to Dearness Johnson. And there's a Colts linebacker that has him dead to rights. It would have been a no gain or maybe a 1-yard loss. And that's how the drive was going to start. And Dearness Johnson broke a tackle and gained 8 yards. In a game that had 85-yard touchdowns and 65-yard touchdowns and the Duvernay return and all that, starting that 2-minute drive with that 8-yard gain because Dearness Johnson broke that tackle, as opposed to starting 2nd and 11, it was 2nd and 2 going into the 2-minute warning, I think was the biggest play on that drive. It got him ahead of the chains, and the Jaguars never looked back until the field goal went through the uprights.
Yeah, this is what it was supposed to look like, where I feel like Lawrence, not necessarily Lawrence, but the Jaguars offense was like really relying on a lot of intermediate and deep shots. And it's okay to like take those shots, but when it's like the whole basis of your offense, things look rough, as we saw in the past month. But I feel like this game was a really good balance, and that might have been the reason that the offense had the best day they've had so far. I mean, certainly opponent has a lot to do with that as well, but the Jaguars, I feel like, really balanced in terms of each area of the field that they wanted to attack rather than going deep too often. And we still saw a little bit of it with that Trevor Lawrence arm punt to Thomas Jr., but I just feel like they were doing a much better job this game of kind of calling the shot plays at the right moments rather than trying to force them a little bit. And so Reedy commented on YouTube, BTJ had 122 yards. I think it is very clear that we need to look his way more. I mean, I thought after the first month that Brian Thomas Jr. was going to be the best or leading receiver on the team by the end of the year, but now it feels like by the end of the London trip, if not before that, like Brian Thomas Jr., even to people outside of Jacksonville, are going to be pretty clear as like he's the guy that defenses have to hone in on, right?
Well, and the interesting thing, too, is you're probably getting Evan Ingram back next week. That's the vibe I'm getting, is that Ingram's going to be available next week. And how does that either help or hinder Brian Thomas's development? It could only hinder it because you're trying to get Ingram involved, but I think it's going to help it because it gives you one more playmaker out there. And the Jaguars are slowly getting some guys back, right? Darnell Savage was back. I think you get Ingram back. The Tyson Campbell window potentially could open up tomorrow. Now, we don't really know. I saw him on the sidelines today, but this is the 4th game he's missed, so his window could potentially open. So you're going to start getting some of these guys back, and that's why, to me, Gus, man, just you got one now. Because everybody was saying, oh, my gosh, here we go again. We're going to lose. We're going to find another way to lose. And for the offense to bail out the defense and to win a close game. So now you can say you're 1-3 in close games with under 2 minutes to go. That's got to be such a giant weight off the shoulders. And all of a sudden you look now, as bad as this year has been, Indianapolis is 2-3. Cleveland lost today. They're 1-4. The Jets lost today. They're 2-3. The loser of the Raiders Broncos is 2-3. You're trying to claw your way out of the abyss in the AFC. It won't take a lot to go from 16th to 12th to 10th. And that's just the process you're going to have to go through digging yourself an 0-4 hole.
Definitely 1 week at a time. Looks like we got Tommy McManus in the car driving back from the game, so we'll bring him on for just a couple of minutes, especially considering the Tom Coughlin induction into the Pride of the Jaguars that happened today. Tommy, how are you doing? Stay safe on the road there, but what are your immediate takeaways from today?
I tell you what, it was a great win, just for the mere fact that they won. The offense was fantastic. I didn't like that one set of play calls when we had the ball. We threw 3 passes. I didn't like that, but Overall, I thought the play calling was good. The defense was a sieve, which they got to clean that up. But everybody's happy, so let's wait till tomorrow to really dive into that. You know what I mean? But they did struggle on defense quite a bit. I mean, Joe Flacco whipped it around. He even beat him on that one scramble. I couldn't believe that nobody caught him. But look, it's a victory, and we needed that victory really bad. And hopefully, this is a game that sparks us to go on a run here. They got to clean up some stuff. It's much easier to clean it up when you win. They should feel very good about the victory, no doubt about that. It was a much needed win, and they figured it out. And by the way, I was one of those people that was worried. I was like, oh my gosh, you can't. I mean, the offense goes down, score, and then the defense giving up scores. I mean, it was just unbelievable that they couldn't stop them. But again, we'll take the victory, man. I'm very excited. I'm very happy for this team. It was a great weekend for alumni weekend. Friday night was awesome. Saturday night was awesome. Going on the field today with all the fellas, and then hearing Coach talk. It's hard to hear where we were at, but just seeing them being inducted, man, so well deserved. By the way, those throwbacks looked freaking awesome, didn't they? They
Right.
wear those every week. Forget the others. Who cares? Like, that's a great look, man. And I tell you what, overall, we'll be happy with the victory, and then tomorrow we'll dive into it because there's a lot of stuff to be fixed on this team on the defensive side of the ball. Too many wide open guys, too many big plays against you. Trayvon Walker was phenomenal, but man, we got to have more pressure by the rest of the guys, and you can't give Flacco that much time, and he had plenty of time today. So overall, we'll take the W. Obviously, we needed it big time, and now we got to clean some things up if we're really going to go on a run here.
Most definitely. I did want to ask both of you guys about the Coughlin ceremony, especially for Tommy as someone who played underneath the Jaguars, his first and all-time winningest head coach. And he did give an amazing speech, I thought, today. And he started by saying the only thing that would make it better is if his late wife, Judy, was there too, which, of course, most definitely. But I think it must have been amazing for him to still be welcomed by the stadium and the fans, but then especially to have people like Tommy and a lot of his former players there. So can you just tell us a little bit more about just like what that experience was like, and not to support Coughlin, even though that was obviously why you were there, but even just for yourself, Tommy, what was that moment like?
I mean, listen, Tom and I go back a long ways from our Boston College days. So I knew Tom, 1991, 4 years before he came the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, I've always loved Coach Coughlin. I've always loved the way he coached. I'm a big fan of tough love and accountability and all that, and he's all about that, and he's all about winning. And it was great to see him. My wife, my kids, we're all close with Coach Coughlin. We were all there today, so special moment for us. I will tell you a little inside story that was pretty funny. Last night, me and Cheever come strolling into the event around 6:30, and Coughlin's addressing the team, and we're late, and we totally interrupted his meeting, and he just looked at us. He's like, no kidding, it was you two. It was so funny. We're like, sorry, coach. Sorry, just a little late. But no, it was great, man. It was hey, listen, he's done a lot for this community. He's done a lot for the organization. He's done a lot for the fans, the team, the city, all of us players, everything he does with the J Fund. But the only critique I'm gonna wonder, that maybe you guys have the answer. Why didn't they have 2017 up there on, next to his years and his name? Because he was instrumental in putting that team together. Now, how it ended wasn't good. I understand that, but man, I don't know. I thought, three championship games, AFC championship game appearances, and the one common denominator is Tom Coughlin. So
Absolutely.
I would have liked to seen that up there, but nonetheless, look, I'm glad he's up there. Well deserved. I thought the teal jackets were a nice touch. They looked really cool last night hanging up. We got to see them, and very just great all around, man. Just great all around. Very happy for the Coughlin family. It's great to see all the grandkids out there, all the family out there, and well deserved. It was overdue, guys. We know this. He was the perfect guy for the job in 1995. He built a winner. filled with a bunch of like-minded men that just wanted to win and didn't care if he kicked the crap out of us to get there. So I know I'm very proud to say that I'm a former player of Coach Tom Coughlin. He's been a big influence on my life, and I tell you, the one thing over everything that he's ever taught any of us was your mind is a very powerful thing, and if you believe it in your mind, your body will follow. And I take that with me all the time. But yeah, he's fantastic. It was great to see him get into the Ring of Honor.
Definitely very, very well deserved. It's impossible to write a book about the history of the Jaguars without including Tom Coughlin's name in pretty much every other page, probably. And so, Tommy, we will let you go so you can get home safe and enjoy the rest of the Sunday with the family. Thank you for stopping by, and congrats to you a little bit just for being there. I'm sure it was definitely a cool moment.
Hey, listen, we got a victory. Finally. We're 1-4, man. We'll take it. You know what I mean? What a great day to be alive and a great day for a W for our team.
Absolutely. All right, Tommy. We'll talk to you next time. Thanks for joining.
All right, guys. Great job. We'll see you next time. Peace.
All right, Hacker. Before you go off to the fifth quarter, I also wanted to get your takes on Tom Coughlin, because even if neither of us played under him as professional football players, I know that you've been covering the team for a very, very long time. And just so, what was it like just seeing that all unfold today for you?
That was my childhood, man. I mean, I was 11 years old when the Jaguars came into existence. I was 12 years old the first time I got Tom Coughlin's autograph, chasing him around the parking lot of what was that Stadium. I mean, that was my childhood. That's what it was. And to see him go in the pride of the Jaguars, to see Jimmy there and Fred and Tony and all the guys, I mean, it was phenomenal, man. It was absolutely phenomenal. And to get a victory on top of it just made today great. Does it take away the pain and the disappointment of the first month of the season? No, but maybe a little ointment, right? A little Band-Aid. And now go get another one. Go to London and beat the rookie. Chicago's going to be feeling very good about themselves. They might be smelling themselves a little bit. 3-2. Just beat the crap out of Carolina today. Caleb Williams never played a game in London. You go beat a rookie quarterback, all of a sudden you're 2-4. And then you stay there, and New England has to come over. And then maybe you get to 3-4. And then at that point, Gus, at 3-4, it's a brand new season. It was a 3-part deal. You got part 1 done today. The next 2 parts you need to take care of over in London.
Totally. Yeah. Just got to go 1 week at a time, though, right? Just like the Jags did this week. So next week will suddenly be a challenge, because even though they are facing a rookie quarterback in his first ever international game, it's also Caleb Williams, who looked pretty spectacular today, even if he played the Carolina Panthers. But yeah, that'll certainly be an interesting matchup of Bears offense against Jaguars defense. And then same with the other side, just because the Bears defense has been one of the better units in football this year. So it'll be a tough test for Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. and company to replicate their 37-point performance from today. And so, what did anything change in your mind, Hacker, from today's game? Because I think a lot of people expected that kind of regression would happen in the Jags after being 0-4 when they probably shouldn't have, would be able to come back and get a bounce back win this week at home against a division rival with a lot of injuries. But was there anything from the 60 minutes of gameplay that kind of swayed you on an opinion of whether it's a player or a coach or the team as a whole from watching the game?
I think my opinion on Brian Thomas and all of our opinions on Brian Thomas were validated. The dude's a stud. I think the offense, I feel a lot better about the offense certainly than I did, 3 hours ago. I probably feel worse about the defense, but overall, it's a win. We can complain about a lot, and there will be time for that. Trust me. I'm going to be heading into the radio station here in 5 minutes. There are going to be some complaints tonight, and I assure you complaints tomorrow when we start our 16 hours of programming on 1010XL. But for tonight, it's a win. The last 4 Sundays have sucked. So enjoy the win. And they're 1-4, and that's reality. But you got a division win. And by the way, Indianapolis may never win in Jacksonville ever again. I'm pretty convinced of that at this point. September of 2014. Every year I have my Colts guys on Hacker After Dark, my Colts media guys, and every year I talk about where were you in life, September 2014. And I get to have them on next year and ask them the same question. September of 2014 is the last time they won a game here. That is insane. I can only imagine what their media is talking about right now.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Even if we were forecasting a little bit at the beginning of the show with if the Jaguars had lost this one, but yeah, it's nice not to be on the other side. I can't imagine what is going through the fans of Colts fans and me right now.
Gus, we're wiping off the brow, man.
That's right.
Would have lost this game. Holy dude. But they didn't. They won the game, and it's going to be a fun fifth quarter coming up on 1010XL.
Absolutely. Make sure you guys check that out. 92.5 FM in Jacksonville. Hacker, can people go hang out with you guys at the fifth quarter, or is it not a remote?
We're in studio tonight.
Oh, in studio. Okay.
Next home game, I believe the Green Bay game, we're going to be at Island Girl Cigar Bar on Gate Park. Okay. So I believe that. So in studio tonight, but you can obviously stream on the 1010XL, my bookie digital platform. Right where you're watching this, we'll be on. It's starting at 6 o'clock. Also YouTube, Facebook, etc. But yeah, after the Green Bay game, I believe is our next remote there at Island Girl Cigar Bar on Gate Parkway.
Sounds good. Well, Hacker, I'll let you go. Have a good show, and thanks as always for joining.
Gus, you're the man. We'll do it again after London next week, and hopefully we'll be 4 at that point.
Yeah, we'll have a little. I don't know. It'll be like 1 o'clock or noon, hopefully before the 1 o'clock games kick off. But yeah, Hack, thanks again. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, we are also going to have Mia O'Brien joining the show very soon from the field on Everbank Stadium. But right now, she is just finishing up getting some locker room quotes and just soaking up all the vibes in there. And so I'm just going to go through the comments, see if we got any questions that want answered or just comments to talk about. Like this one from Steve Bossa on YouTube who said, Trayvon with 3 sacks today. Yeah. I imagine it has to be the first 3-sack game of his career. It's probably only I think it's the 3rd multiple sack game of his career after the Dolphins game in week 1 of this year and then the Panthers game in week 16 or whatever it was of last year. And so that means that's 3 multi-sack games in Trayvon's last 8 to 10 professional games. So that's pretty good. And especially after Trayvon had a relatively fast start to the season, obviously against Miami, but then I think he played all right against Cleveland too. And the last 2 weeks, he's definitely quieted down. But it was nice to see Trayvon kind of get back at it, affecting the quarterback and bringing down Flacco 3 different times, including what was essentially the game-winning sack as time expired in the 4th quarter. So definitely a big shout out to Trayvon Walker. One of those 3 sacks was a strip sack, which allowed the Jaguars to get 3 points at the end of the first half. So monster day for Trayvon. Would not have won this game without him. Reedy said thoughts on the O-line today. Ben Solak had a stat on Twitter saying that Lawrence only had 1 pressure so far through at some point in the 4th quarter. And so based on that, even the eye test, does anyone remember really Trevor being pressured that much in this game? And then obviously Bigsby had the 60 whatever it was yard touchdown in the 4th quarter. But I thought that in general, the running game was pretty solid and the pass protection was really solid. And again, part of that is opponent because the Colts are missing their top 2 or even 3 defensive ends, plus DeForest Buckner is on injured reserve. So they don't really have a ton of defense or a lot of juice on that side anyway. But with that said, definitely a good performance from the Jaguars' offensive line and their sacking performances at this point, because even though the team lost at Houston last week, Doug Peterson called it by far the best game the offensive line had played so far this season. And I think anyone who will watch them closely would have agreed with that. And so back-to-back good games for the offensive line. Cam Robinson especially looked just super fired up and was definitely in the zone. My guy Ezra Cleveland continues to look like an X factor. So the offensive line is, especially in pass protection, again, on its way up. I've seen a couple comments about – actually, before we get to comments, I'll return to those later. But we do have Mia O'Brien setting up a little video space. So we are going to go to her momentarily. Bring her on.
How we doing?
Yeah, you're in the tunnel. I was wondering if you could find a little spot.
Yeah, we are in the tunnel. Let's see if we can move a little closer. Can you hear me, Gus, most importantly?
Yeah, the audio sounds great.
Okay, perfect. Here we go. We just got, a little bit of rain that I was forewarned about. So yeah, we're just gonna kind of tilt our. There we go, like this. Bucky knows we're live on the instant reaction right now on Duval Rundown. You want to pop on? Going right here. I don't want to get in the rain. So, all right, perfect. Now we're ready to rock and roll, Gus. You got me.
All right, Mia. I assume that you had just left the locker room a few seconds ago. So why don't you give us just the rundown on the vibes? Obviously, they got to be high, but just what did you see and hear and feel in there?
Yeah, here is your Duval rundown from the Jaguars locker room. I described it to a lot of the players as almost like the best possible way for the air to be coming out of a balloon, the most cathartic feeling possible. Anton Harrison told me that was the nail on the head. And yes, it just felt like there was and he verbatim says, and of course, this will be up on our 1010XL Jaguars channel, there was certainly pressure, especially to win this one. Not really looking to go 0-5 and then like your chances of trying to turn this thing around from that point forward. And so the pressure was something they talked about, but in the words of Anton at his introductory presser 2 years ago, pressure makes diamonds. And I think what you saw was the Jaguars' best players, as Josh Hines-Allen just put it, the Jaguars' diamonds, their best players, seizing this moment, whether it was Trevor Lawrence with a career-high 371 yards, Trayvon Walker with the 3 sacks, which, as Josh just told me, when you think about it, 41 sack really was created by 44. You could also argue that there was another sack right before the strip sack that he was about a split second away from also getting a hands there. And so That's what you need. Like, the story of the Jaguars' first 4 weeks has been their higher, bigger, quote unquote, name players maybe not answering the bell to the extent that so many people expected them to, and the younger players flashing. Today you saw younger players flashing, but you also saw those established veterans taking that step to where we are accustomed to them playing.
Love to hear that. Who got more pats on the back, would you say? Birthday boy Trevor Lawrence or game-winning kick guy Cam Little?
Honestly, a lot of the praise I've heard in the locker room was really for 44. Not that there wasn't praise for 16 and 39, but there was a lot of praise for 44. There was a lot of praise for number 4, Tank Bigsby, as well. Maybe that's because I mostly was talking to players in the trenches. But no, I think that I just had to tell Josh that Trevor had 371 yards. He didn't know that. He did know how many sacks Trayvon Walker had, of course, being his running mate on the defensive line. And so, yes, I think that, again, I think that there was this sense of, after last week in particular, those 2 missed throws that were identified in postgame and throughout the week, in press conferences, the miss to Brian Thomas Jr., the miss to Christian Kirk, the fact that he quite literally hit Brian Thomas Jr. for the 85-yard touchdown. I don't want to say it nullifies missing him on what would have been a 99-yard touchdown against the Browns and what would have been a long touchdown against the Texans, but it does almost, like, I don't want to say it's like a cathartic kind of resolution, but it kind of is. And then the fact that he hit Christian Kirk for the 66-yard pickup in the fourth quarter, just as my sister was lamenting to me that Christian Kirk was getting her no fantasy football points. Certainly, it's something that I think we may look back on. We don't know how this story is going to finish. We don't know what happens to the Jacksonville Jaguars here in 2024. But what I do know in this moment is if they do turn this thing around, you're going to look back to the fact that he notably missed those 2 players on throws last week, and he hit those throws this week.
Absolutely. I asked after the same question, but going into this, or just looking at not even the final score, but just seeing that the Jaguars went 0-4 in their first 4 weeks, it's not necessarily a huge surprise that they ended up kind of seeing regression happen and getting a win finally, especially in the NFL, which is such a week-to-week league, and teams are always a lot closer than people think. And so it shouldn't really necessarily surprise anyone, I don't think, that the Jaguars were able to get the win. But just what specifically did you see from this game in this 60 minutes of action that maybe like changed your mind about a player or like gave you a new thought, or just, yeah, what changed your mind from today's game about the Jaguars?
Yeah, I think the cohesion, moving up and down the field, matriculating, in the words of Travis Etienne, the fact that it wasn't 1 or 2 sustained drives, it was multiple. And knowing this Gus Bradley defense, Hayes Carline and I talked about it at length on the Terminex kickoff show this morning. When it comes to this defense, they want you to organize and orchestrate 12, 15 play drives, make your mistake, and then they'll capitalize on it. And the fact that the Jaguars did not make mistakes outside of Trevor Lawrence throwing into triple coverage and a couple drops here and there, that says to me that this team can move the ball up and down the field. Not necessarily on everyone, because I don't think this Colts defense is necessarily, top 5 in the National Football League. And the hope is that the Jaguars would be facing outfits like that in the near future at some point, as the season progresses. And, heaven forbid we say the P word of playoffs. But that's where I don't want to say just because you were able to thwart a team that hasn't won in Jacksonville for 10 years, everything is solved. And Mitch Morse just echoed that to me. He was like, look, I don't want to say that, hey, we figured it out. Because as soon as you think you figured it out, something else comes up. And so I think, though, the idea of multiple sustained drives, less 3 and outs, that was a huge development on the offensive side of the ball. And by the way, and again, we'll be posting all those interviews coming up a little bit later on the 1010XL Jaguars channel. We just had to inform Josh Hines-Allen that the Jaguars surrendered 24 points in the fourth quarter. He had no idea. He thought it was 14 points. Now, granted, one of those touchdowns was obviously on the first play of the fourth quarter. He honestly said he forgot about the field goal as well. And he was like, I knew about the 2 deep shots and we have to correct that. But that's also something that I think, if the Jaguars are to turn this season around, needs to be addressed. Well, yes, they are stopping the run. Yes, outside of the fourth quarter today, they are stopping teams at opportune moments. They actually created a takeaway today. I do think if this defense was not described as bend, don't break. It was described as nothing cheap and nothing deep. They're giving up some cheap stuff and they're giving up some deep stuff right now, Gus. And that's where I look at the 345 passing yards last week for C.J. Stroud. Now I look at the gaudy number that Joe Flacco put up today. And I know that they're still trying to figure out if they have the horses for courses to run man defense without Tyson Campbell, without Quay Lewis. But at the same time, I do think when, the competition, with all due respect to the Chicago Bears, who, by the way, got a nice little win today, granted against Carolina Panthers, but when the competition takes a step up in terms of the offensive efficiency with the Green Bay Packers, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Minnesota Vikings, and Detroit Lions in a murderer's row, you're going to have to find a way to limit those passing yards.
Totally. Yeah, I think in the first month of the season, the story for the Jags was defense, okay, not great, but not terrible, and the offense is worse. And then today it was almost kind of the flip side. With the offense, we saw a lot more positive signs. With the defense, even if Trayvon had 3 sacks and they had a strip sack and a few other positive things happened, they ultimately did allow 34 points and a lot of passing yards to Joe Flacco for the second year in a row. So I think that's definitely going to be something that needs to be cleaned up. Do you have any thoughts on what could happen in terms of how to change that, how to clean that up in terms of just when players are coming back from injury, that'll make everything easier. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's a scheme thing. We've talked about Nielsen's tendencies of press man coverage on previous Duval rundown shows. And so do you think, what action do you think they could take to help going forward?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when they came out in zone to begin this game and they were playing off, I was honestly shocked because, with all due respect as well to the Indianapolis Colts wide receivers, Alec Pierce obviously proved us all wrong in the final minutes of this ball game. But I believe even with the defensive backs that the Jaguars have who are healthy, they could keep up with the Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierces of the world. A.D. Mitchell had a couple of balls go right through his hands. And I think he's going to be a good player, but at the same time, I think that a Ronald Darby can keep up with him. And so I was honestly shocked they came out with zone, and that's my bigger concern is, did they spend, much like Joe Cullen for what it's worth in 2021, did they spend all offseason saying they were going to do one thing and preaching it, and now just being just kidding, we got to do this now and go back to plan B? That's a little concerning. They seem confident in whatever they're running, for better or worse, even as they're surrendering first down after first down to Joe Flacco. They keep getting up off the mat, which is a positive, and that means that there's belief in the coaching, which is a very important thing, as we've learned this week. But yeah, it's going to be interesting, especially knowing the Bears do have, as much as their offensive line is a bit weaker than the one the Jaguars face today, they do have potent wide receivers, tight ends who can make plays, who I do think will stretch this defense and test that press man ability. So I don't know if it's a quick fix, Gus. I know that I have been impressed with Darian Jones at times. I have been extremely impressed by Ventrell Miller. stepping in for Foye and Lewickin. I think there's going to be not an argument that Foye is not going to play when he comes back, but there's going to be an argument for more of a rotation there truly, because look at what Ventrell's proven when he's had even more opportunity to get on the field. And not that we all loved the rotations, because I don't think we all did. And Doug Peterson said that maybe for the defensive front, but not for every other position on the defense. And I do think Buster Brown has really proven his worth. If I could give an X factor to your point of maybe once players come back, it resolves everything. I do think you saw the presence of Darnell Savage today, whether he was making plays or not. I haven't actually looked at the statistics from the game yet to see how many pass breakups or how many tackles he had, but I do know he was around the ball more times than not. And again, if you don't have him in that back end, yes, you have Ronald Darby, who's the leader of the outside corners, if you may. But aside from that, it's Andre Cisco and a bunch of kids, for lack of a better term. Between Jarian Jones being a rookie, between Antonio Johnson in his first year as a starter, Buster Brown, yes, is a third-year player, but he is, ultimately he's a super sub. And so I think that the presence of Darnell Savage is perhaps proof that once they do have the horses they planned on having, maybe you'll see better results with the scheme that they planned on running.
Yeah, I thought Darnell Savage was noticeable today in a good way, where you could see just his playmaking, his energy. Definitely a good guy to get back, and the Jags will continue getting guys back on the defensive side of the ball. So, Mia, I'll let you go since I know you got to get all these YouTube videos up to our YouTube page, 1010XL Jaguars. My last question for you before you go is just how gorgeous did the jerseys look up close and in person?
They were glorious. That was, I think, the first thing you said to me when you saw me in the press box. Gus, the Prowler videos were sharp as hell. Yeah, I'm no dummy. I know a little thing or two about content creation. We made sure we got front and center for those videos. They're glorious. Personally, I don't want to predict the future, but I do envision a world in which if the Jaguars win their next two in London, we will hear about, well, the Jaguars have won more games in London than the United States this calendar year. So we'll hear about that. And if the Jaguars upset the world, because at this juncture it would be upsetting the world, and they defeat the Minnesota Vikings the next time they wear the throwback jerseys, because correct me if I'm wrong, November 10th is the next time they're slated to wear the Prowler jersey. If they upset the Vikings, I think we will also be talking about the Prowler jerseys being 2-0. It's a matter of, can those 3 games in between the London trip or 2 games, and then the Prowler jersey, if the Jaguars can find a way to win one of those 2, suddenly you put yourself right back in the conversation of, at the very least, giving yourself a chance down the home stretch of the 2024 season.
Most definitely. All right, Mia, thank you as always for joining. We will see you on the Thursday edition of the show at 9:04. And thanks again. Stay safe. Stay dry.
Bye, guys. Yes, try to stay dry. Go build the ark. Bye, everyone.
See ya. All right. Let's just wrap up with some comments, some discussion. Dell said on YouTube, did y'all notice all the motion we were running? Press saw Seth Waters' tweet. I thought the same thing, Dell. I don't know if I can bring up Seth Waters' tweet, but if you were watching Duval Rundown on Thursday, you saw me pull up a tweet showing Seth Water of ESPN Analytics that the Jags ranked 31st or maybe 30th in usage of motion during the snap. They run like a average-ish rate of motion before the snap, but they really don't run a lot during the snap, which of course can get players like moving the wrong way or even just make them think for a half second longer, which can open up a lot of different lanes. And so, yeah, I think, I mean, clearly, I think Seth Water was actually the one who tweeted or posted like that the Jags were 31st in offensive line rankings. And so clearly press and the offense or whoever is paying attention. And so, yeah, I thought the same thing, Dale. Reedy said good O-line equals good plays. Balky should be taking notes. Yeah. Dell added Antonio Johnson struggled again. Yeah, again, I said this towards the top of the show, but I feel like the biggest struggle was from the Jaguars defense, was from their safety room, especially because, like Mia was kind of saying this too, when the Jags go into man-on-man coverage, they feel like even without Tyson Campbell, they have the cornerbacks to be able to hold up in man-to-man. But the problem is that they don't have the safeties to hold up in man-to-man. Like Andre Cisco himself has gotten cooked a few times, including by Nico Collins on the red zone touchdown last week. Just no hope for him going against Nico Collins in the slot. But teams are continuing to do that type of thing where they put their best pass catchers into the slot or into alignments where they know they're going to be matched up one-on-one against either Cisco or Antonio Johnson, and neither of them have been able to really show the ability to hold up against like players other than tight ends and running backs and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I know that there was a lot of people commenting and clamoring about Nielsen, and obviously it's his defense and it needs to improve in general, but I would point to the safety room as what needs to improve the most. And we'll see what Nielsen is able to do in terms of kind of getting away from putting them into bad situations. Let me scroll all the way to the top real quick. My mom commented. Hi, Mom. Love you. Thanks for tuning in. What else we got? A lot of people saying congrats to Hacker, which is definitely keep it coming because I know he appreciates it, and it's not the reason he did it or anything like that, but Hacker has lost more than 100 pounds in the last several months, or probably closer to a year, but it's been an incredible journey to see, and even more impressive is that he's keeping the weight off, which obviously is more difficult to do than taking weight off in the first place, is keeping it off. And so shout out to Hacker for losing that weight and being in good shape and being him. Real Health Talk with Dr. Coring asked on YouTube, is it safe to say that Gabe Davis is a poor signing? I think it's probably safe to say that it's unlikely that he'll live up to his contract, but that's the case for the majority of free agents. Like, if you're going to be a free agent, your team is going to keep you if they want to keep you. Like, I feel like the majority of free agents, like, obviously there's some cases like Jawan Taylor for the Jaguars a couple of years ago. The Jaguars liked him and thought he was a good player and would have liked to keep him, but he just they got outpriced by the Kansas City Chiefs. And so sometimes that'll happen where it's just a player has a great contract year and they're just going to take the biggest paycheck that they can, and reasonably so. Like, go get that generational wealth, go care or set up your family for future years. Yeah, long story short, most of the time, free agent signings just don't really work out because chances are the team that let them go for a reason. And so with Gabe, like, that's kind of the reason I think he's going to be underwhelming or not live up to his contract, is just because it works that way for a lot of free agents. But in terms of what we've seen on the field through the first 5 weeks, I'm not pressing the panic button too quickly. I know he hasn't really done a lot. I don't know what he did today, maybe like 2 or 3 catches. I talked earlier about how Trevor missed him on a third down, but that would have just been a catch for 12 yards or so. And so he has definitely been pretty quiet, especially relative to what Zay Jones has been able to produce in pretty much the same role in the last year or two. But again, like, I don't know. He's still getting first downs. Like, he's still getting, like, kind of doing everything that they're asking him. I think he's fine as your 3rd/4th option. And what we saw last year when Zay Jones and then Christian Kirk got hurt is that the Jaguars were really, really burned by their lack of receiver depth. So, again, even if Davis hasn't really done a lot in the first 5 weeks, and it's totally fair to be pretty underwhelmed by him as a new addition to this team, I think that just him being in the role that he is as like that 3rd or 4th target, that'll get you a first down or 2 each game. And most importantly, just be reliable and trustworthy depth for in case one of your further up guys does go down. I don't think it's a regrettable free agent signing at this point. Shelton asked on Facebook, why don't the Jags do any crossing routes like every other team? It seems like an easy completion for most teams. Yeah, I don't know, especially because Doug Peterson loves a good crossing route, or at least he used to, like mesh, which anyone who's played Madden knows that play, but it's basically like 2 crossing routes and then a 3rd route that kind of just settles over the middle of the field. And there's usually like a rail route by a running back and another route too, but it's basically 2 crossers and then a guy settling in the middle of those 2 crossers. And hypothetically, it will work against any coverage, because if it's man coverage, one of those 2 crossers should be able to separate against their opponent. And then if it's zone, then hypothetically, that middle guy who just sits in the zone between the 2 crossing routes will be able to be open. And so basically what I'm trying to say is that a crossing route or a play like mesh that has crossing routes tends to have a lot of options for the quarterback and for the offense. And so I don't know why the Jags don't do a lot of them. I'm confident that they have a decent amount of them in their playbook, but they just don't necessarily call them a lot. And I think it's just because they like getting to other concepts or other plays or other things more. So yeah, I think it's a good question, but I don't really have a super clear answer. Reedy said Tank should be RB1. I'm still pushing back on that a little bit. I think if he plays 50% of snaps and gets 50% of touches starting next week, then I wouldn't scoff at that. But I still think that Travis Etienne is a much, much better football player than what his stats so far this season show. And even though we saw Tank a little bit more in passing situations, like he had a screen pass that he took down the right sideline for a long gain in the first half, I still think that the coaching staff doesn't have a ton of trust in Tank on third downs and fourth downs, whether it's to pass protect or run a route. And so I think that's still Travis Etienne's role. And I still think the starting role is Travis Etienne's. And so, yeah, I would make this less about Travis because, again, I'm still holding out hope that he'll be able to show how talented he really is. But Tank absolutely deserves a shout out up there with Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. and Trayvon Walker for today's performance. Tank was great. Pat Man asked on Facebook, why is Armstead playing so much D end? He looks out of position. Well, I think it's probably because he wants to play more defensive end, and that was kind of a rumor, is that that's part of the reason he signed with Jacksonville, is because he would get more opportunities to rush the passer from the edge, which just hypothetically would create more opportunities for production, because it's, even though there's like, it's kind of tough because on one hand, it's, you have a farther path to the quarterback when you're rushing on the edge. And so just having a farther distance makes that more difficult. But at the same time, you're much more liable and likely to see double teams when you're rushing from the interior. And so I assumed that Armstead wanted to play more defensive end as opposed to defensive tackle, just to be able to get more sacks and more quarterback rushing opportunities. But the other reason is that the Jaguars just do not have a lot of defensive end depth. They've got Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, which is a very nice starting duo. But after that, especially after Trevis Gibson was traded in the preseason, or right before the preseason maybe, like, they got Yasir Abdullah, Miles Cole is still hanging out. I don't even know if he was active for today's game. But like, at this point, Eric Armstead and Roy Robertson Harris, who's also more of a defensive tackle, are basically like the second stringers at defensive end. So it'll be, so far that's been fine, I guess, but it'll be interesting to see how that develops throughout the season, just as more guys get dinged up. Dun, 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 dun. P. Price asked on YouTube, will LRZ play this season? I'm blanking on who LRZ is. Maybe it's a joke and I got caught. LRZ? I can't think of who that is. Couple Caldwell scapegoat comments, as in Mike Caldwell, the defense coordinator from last year. Yeah, you're not wrong. Price said, I watched LRZ run in Gloucester, England, and was shocked when they checked his speed at 24 miles per hour. Oh, okay. So you're talking about Louis Ruiz. Man, I forget his last name. But basically the international pathway player guy that the Jags got. He's a tight end. Maybe actually more of just a receiver. But he's a guy from the UK, played rugby there. Apparently he's like another Beatle over there. And so, unfortunately, P. Price, we appreciate all the fans in London and in England, but I don't think that your guy LRZ is going to get any playing time really unless we see just a ton of injuries to the Jags. And so it'd be really cool to see an international player get a chance, but yeah, maybe temper expectations for LRZ. So that'll do it. Check out the next episode of Duval Rundown on Tuesday when I will be joined by TBD, but someone from 1010XL as a guest to break down this game between the Colts and the Jaguars. Shout out to the Jags for winning their first game. Shout out to everyone who made it to the bank today despite the 0-4 record coming into the game and the rainy weather. Shout out to Tom Coughlin and his family and everyone else who's there's obviously too many names to name, but just everyone that kind of had a hand in Tom Coughlin's success and him being inducted today into the Pride of the Jaguars. Shout out to Mia and Tommy and Hacker for joining the show. Shout out to you for watching and listening right now. Pat Man said on Facebook, do you think Doug should have promoted Jim Bob Cooter to OC for a new look? Absolutely, I do. I think Jim Bob Cooter is a much better offensive coordinator than Press Taylor. But 37 points today. Trevor Lawrence, birthday boy, one of the best games of his career. Best game of Trayvon Walker's career. Best game of Brian Thomas's career. Best game of Tank Bigsby's career. It's a career day all around. So enjoy it. Have a good rest of your weekend. And I will see you on Tuesday for the next episode of Duval Rundown. Peace, guys.